Hello guys, my name is Josh. I am 23 years old and I'm autistic. And I'm here with my mother who is in her 40s currently. Is that correct?
47.
You had me in your 20s and then you knew I was autistic in your 30s because I was diagnosed with autism at 8 years old. And you had me in your early 20s, so that means 20s, you were raising me while I was autistic, not knowing I was autistic, and then 30s, you were raising me as an autistic son. So today we are just going to be talking about what that was like for you, what you could have done differently, what you did correctly. Hopefully the experience can help other people with their journey through parenting or living with their loved ones who have autism. What was it like the first 8 years of raising me? Was it hard?
I think what was hard is if I can go back to sort of like first I had our first child, so that was like, in 1995, and she was just kind of like, your typical, I don't think there was anything really different about her that I would have alerted me as to, there's something different. So I was like, okay, and then when we had you 2 years later, 97, it was like, okay, there's something different. And I just thought at first it was because you were a male. Like I was kind of like, okay, there are certain differences I didn't know. Like, at first it was kind of like you just slept really long, and it was like, okay, so that's good. Yay.
I still do that.
I know. But I think it was like, as you got a little bit older, the development was really not what I expected. And then there was things that you started doing that even as a young kid, I was like, well, I don't understand that. Like, wouldn't that hurt? Like, so you're laying on your tummy and you're like only like maybe a year and you start hitting your head on the ground. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because it's like, ouch, right? And so those kinds of things alerted me that something wasn't right. And I didn't know at the time that was stimming. I just didn't know because I didn't know
I was probably just trying to feel something. I remember not doing that specifically when I was 1 because that's too long ago. But I remember when I was visiting like my grandparents' house and stuff, I would like constantly bang my head on the pillow, and they were like concerned. They thought I was like trying to, I don't know, harm myself in some way. Yeah. Which I guess maybe to some extent I was. I just was trying to like feel something. I remember just being like, it's fun to feel the feeling in my head or what have you.
And I have no idea what that would feel like or why you would do it. And of course, as a person that has never had any contact with really autism or understanding that at the time, it was just frightening as a mom. And I was just like, what is going on? And I didn't have any peers that were on the spectrum or anything, any understanding. I didn't even know what the word autism meant. So for me, it was like, what is going on with this person? And it was really quite scary because, it's your child and you love that person and you're like, what's wrong? And I kind of went from there, and it took a long time to reach a diagnosis too.
Did I get like misdiagnosed before I was diagnosed finally with autism at 8? Did you think it was something else?
Yeah, and it took so long because really I knew something was wrong early like that, and kind of like wasn't sure, but knew there was like stuff, and so we took you to like and they kind of were doing, like just basic early testing of where are your milestones at? Is there any indication of slow development? They did a testing and said that you were kind of a little delayed but on par, like nothing really major. I still felt there was stuff like that didn't make any sense. Again, like, as you aged, you didn't speak. Like you wouldn't talk.
Yes, I didn't talk until I was 4, correct?
Yes, and I found that like really distressing because it's like, you wouldn't really make even any really sounds that were in an effort to communicate. There would be sounds, of course, if you're hungry or you're, there's something wrong. Obviously there's a child that's reacting to something wrong, so they'll cry or there's things like that. But nothing that was like, okay, there's no like desire to communicate, like verbally.
Yeah, that's strange. I mean, I can't explain why that was the case. Obviously, like that's way too far back for me to like try and explain my mindset back then. But,
and that was a really scary, weird thing. And of course, mind you, I have your older sister there that I'm also raising. So it was like, I'm going to her and taking care of her needs and stuff, but then also trying to understand you. And there was this stress there with just right? And then she couldn't communicate with you on a level that was, I would say, normal between siblings. And so there was that loss too of, these siblings aren't connecting. So that was sad for me as a mom to feel like, I really wanted you to know her and her to know you, but that there was like an impasse. So that was really hard. And then there's this grief because something's wrong and nobody wants anything wrong with their kid.
Yeah, of course.
So And then at the time, too, it wasn't as open and aware as autism is now, so you get, like, a lot of judgment. And new-time parents, I mean, it's already hard as it is. Well, imagine your child is, like, screaming or flapping or banging, and then there's people looking at you like, what is wrong with them, and what are you doing that they're like that? And you're kind of, like, trying to scramble figuring it out. So
yeah, it's definitely
scary.
like embarrassing in public if I were to scream or do something weird. What exactly like did I do?
Well, I mean, I can go back and forth between different ages. At first, when you're little, it's like you're at home so much, and because I went, like I decided with the older one to kind of like we went to homeschooling because I did take her to preschool, but she was so brilliant that it was boring for her, and I'd be carting you back and forth that I went, I'll teach her at home. The basics. Then it kind of went like that for you, that it was almost like we were home so much that there wasn't really like a lot of out of the house time for me to realize like how terribly different you were, I guess, in a way, with socialization, with community and other people. We would go to the stores, and I can remember one time that you were probably much older than the baby, like you were, I think, between 6 and 10. But you were in the store and it was Christmas time, which is the worst time to be in a mall, right? Because you're so overwhelmed that you really melted down right on the floor in the, outside of EB Games or somewhere we were. And I guess you wanted something really important to you. Like, I don't know what happened, but you were like falling over and crying and screaming. And you're a big kid at 8, 9, 10. Like, you're not like little.
Yeah.
So people were like looking at me like, what the fuck? And like, you're such a brat. Like, they have that look, because they have no clue what's going on in your head. And it's just so hard because I felt like, first of all, ostracized, then judged, then angry because it's like, you're a sweet and kind person. You're just struggling with whatever's going on in your head that I don't get.
Yeah, it isn't like me being bratty, like,
yeah,
Mom, I need that GameCube or whatever.
It wasn't like that at all.
Hold you hostage. Like, I wasn't doing it out of malice to embarrass you, because typically a kid of that age, if they were to do that, they would be doing it on purpose in order to, like, punish you and embarrass you so they could get the thing.
But some people assumed that.
Not the case.
Yeah, but some people assumed that. And then they would stare at me, and I would get this evil eye look, and it was just so harsh and hard. And I didn't have the skills like I have now to go, well, who the hell cares what people think? I'm going to carry on.
Of course.
I
mean, you were a young mother. You were like in your 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, point, and so, and then also by that time, we had the third, and she was little, so I'm carting around her too. And, we had the 4 in all, just so people know. And this was also before I understood that you had autism. If I had understood that, I probably wouldn't have had more than you and your firstborn, the firstborn. Because I think that when you have autistic children, they need so much special love and care and attention to get them through it all that I think I was always very overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it would have been easier. But I do love the others, of course, and I don't wish they weren't here. It's just more like, wow, if I had understood the genetics, I definitely would not have had another after you. Not saying anything negative about you, but because of the need, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have the skills. I felt like so stupid. Like I really had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah, and I don't think most people would. Even today, there's not a lot of information out there, even though there is more than there was back then. The thing about me prior to being 11 is actually I don't have much memory of anything vividly prior to me being 11. Because when I think about autism and like how a person develops, an autistic person develops, I've noticed this trend, and I don't think there's like an official medical term for it. Because I was talking to like a psychologist about this, and he was like, this is really interesting, and I've never heard anyone describe it this way, but this correlates with other autistic people to where there's like levels where you like kind of have like a evolution or a breakthrough in like figuring out something socially, which alters how you act forever past that point. So it's like a threshold, a social awareness threshold. I think I passed one of them when I was 11, which helps me remember everything from 11 up to how old I am today. And then obviously I learned more and more throughout the years, like being a teenager and etc.
Well, really interesting, because that sort of correlates with when I started doing RDI. When we first found out you had autism around 8 years old, and I guess we didn't get to how we all did that, but eventually we got that diagnosis from that was when you were 8. And of course they flood parents with a whole bunch of information, and I was like, oh my god, right? Like, it's like, here's your autism funding of X amount per year till they're this age, and you can now hire people from all sorts of, as long as they're on this autism list of credits and blah blah, and here's the therapies, and here's the different things you can do, and I was blown away. Like, I didn't know what to do. eventually, the first thing we did was hire a consultant, someone to help us plan who is it that we're going to have now work with us to help you reach certain milestones. And she was, I didn't like her at all when I met her. I felt like, oh my God, but there wasn't much choices on the list at that time as to who was allowed to work with you, because it has to be that the government approves this person. So we got her, and she kind of helped me to make some decisions, and she guided us to use the approach of ABA, Applied Behavioral Analysis, which is where, you know, they work with a person with autism, and they give them rewards for doing correct behavior, and then when they don't do correct behavior, they don't get rewarded. So it's much like a dog getting cookies.
Yes.
And it drove me absolutely crazy. I hated it so much. I
hated it too.
I mean, I felt it was so demeaning. And this is me, okay, as a mother. Like, I mean, there's many moms that say that it has helped them, so I'm not putting that down. I don't want to put it down, but I'm just saying, in my experience with you, I hated it. So I looked for something different, and that's when we came across the RDI idea with relationship development intervention. It was about cognitive awareness and so on. And so we started working with that other person that we worked with for quite some time. And she did a really good job helping me to understand what it was, and it was about basically filling in the gaps in your development that didn't happen when you were kind of developing as a baby. So it was really weird, because obviously you're like this older kid, like you were like, I don't know if it was 9 or 10 or something at the time, and you would sit down and roll a ball with me. And it was weird, because it's like, why would you do that at that age? But it was to fill in something else. And so what we would do is, I'll give an example. I'd take this ball, and you'd sit there, and then when I rolled it to you, I'd look at your eyes. I wouldn't roll it to you until you gave me eye contact. And it was really cool. And then you did it back.
Oh, that was so helpful.
And it was really weird, because it's almost like it wired a certain part of you that wasn't there. And then I would notice things would change, like you were saying, this threshold. And something else would change, and you'd start doing things you never did before. And I was like, so cool. I think the first time you gave me eye contact, I cried. Because really, you had never given me eye contact. And that's a natural thing between human beings, you know, and it's a way to connect. And because I never got it with you, you never saw me.
Yeah,
you know?
there's a misconception where autistic people can't make eye contact or can't do these things. And it's not that they can't, it's just that they have to learn it in a more manual way. Like, it doesn't come naturally, but you can learn it. Like, for example, you can't become a great mechanic naturally, but if you go to school for it and learn it, you can become a great mechanic. It is similar to that in that way. Also, going back to like the ABA or whatever it was called. Was it called ABA?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that is a very like binary and I feel like archaic way to do it. And even though you had said it has helped other parents with autistic children, I do think it should be like phased out or like completely removed, because basically it teaches an autistic person to, instead of fix their problems, kind of put like a band-aid fix, like a mask, to where, okay, this is what you're supposed to do and this is what you're not supposed to do. But they aren't telling them why. Like, for example, we learned with the ball how to make eye contact, and I kind of like learned that eye contact is important for like socializing or whatever, and I kind of learned why. But if you do something like, hey, you're supposed to make eye contact with this person at this time in this specific circumstance, I'm like, okay, I'll do it, but why? You know?
Right. And that's why I liked this RDI so much better with, because there was meaning behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And then with the ABA, to just finish that off, because I really don't like it, because I have seen like other autistic people go through it, specifically like I went to like a Catholic church thing to learn how to like be baptized or what have you, and I was in like the special needs area, and I saw other autistic people. Every autistic person, well, most of them have like this obsession or this like thing that they really love and they're really into. What something like ABA would do is that they would exploit that in order to get them to do behaviors that they didn't know why they were doing it, but they like literally like emotionally manipulated them with the thing they really love. So it's like, oh, you can't do that thing until you do what I say, and it was literally like commanding them like cattle. One time someone just told them to do the work, and they would get like chocolate out from their truck or whatever, and that person got really excited, but you know, I just felt like it was very exploitive. But with the RDI way, it's more so like, instead of learning the action, learning why the action takes place and building the skills rather than just doing the action, right?
And I think it also makes what it is you're learning relevant to you. Like, there's a relevancy. It's not just because someone said so or those are the arbitrary rules. There's reason behind it. There's something like, because it allows me to relate. And relating is what's important to people. in order to connect. We want to share our ideas. We want to understand one another's ways of thinking. We want to understand what someone likes, what someone doesn't like. And all of these different things are never going to occur unless you can make that connection. And those social connections are what is hard, I believe, for people on the spectrum, so it seems from my point of view.
Yeah, and if you tell someone to just do a command, they're not adding their personalization to it. They don't know why they're doing it. They're like, okay, I'm going to say thank you or hi because that's what I need to say, but I'm not saying it because I feel it.
Yes.
And you gotta like teach autistic people how to express it, because there is this other misconception that autistic people don't have as many emotions or are more subdued in that way, and it's just that we express it differently, or we don't really know how to express it. So we always feel certain things, but we can choose when to express it or how to express it.
Right.
And sometimes we don't know how to apply that.
I used to think, like, why are you so unsympathetic? Like, you just seemed like someone could fall down on the floor and you could walk over them. Like, you didn't notice that they're hurting or that that's a priority, or this natural response to go, okay, like, I need to help this person. That's the priority.
Yeah, I feel bad, but how do I... the question was, like, how do I express it, and what action do I take in order to make them feel better? Those are stuff I didn't know.
And so because you didn't know it, is it just kind of like you continue on the course of whatever you were really just doing?
Yeah.
Because that was really weird.
If you passed by an issue and you didn't know how to fix it, you'd be like, oh, well, it's not my job, whatever.
Okay.
You know?
I'm just trying to understand, because from a parent point of view, that's like, oh my God, my child doesn't care about their sibling. And from a parent point of view, that can really hurt. You can go, oh my God, they don't care about other people in the family.
And there's also sorry to interrupt. There's also the logic behind it, to where like, oh, someone else will fix this and it'll be fine in a couple days. So, I mean, if I can accelerate that process, sure. But I mean, if I don't know how to accelerate it, whatever, they'll be fine in the end.
Right.
Like, you know, so I still care about them being fine, but I know they're going to be fine in the end. So I'm like, okay, well.
Right. Okay, so that's kind of good for, I think, other parents to understand. Like, for me, over time, I kind of started to learn that. Because, I mean, obviously, I've been your mother for 22 years. So there's a part of what observation that comes where you go, okay, there's other times where you show that you care in one way or another. So it's not that you're void of caring. It's just that obviously it's different for you than it is for others to kind of show how to show that care or when to do it. So that was something I kind of had to figure out instead of really thinking what I was thinking, which was you don't give a rip. And that's hard when you're a mom, because obviously you think, oh, like, how come they don't care about their other siblings and they mean nothing to them? They walk by them, they don't show any desire to share or any desire to comfort, or, you know, and so that was hard as a parent. And sometimes I think some parents can actually take those feelings too hard and then almost develop an anger or hatred or resentment or whatever for that child on the spectrum.
Yeah, and if anyone feels that way, I recommend dropping it, because for autistic people, there is a disconnect between how we feel and how we express it. Like, normally for people, it kind of like flows into each other, to where you feel something, you'll just naturally express it. But for an autistic person, it's like, we feel it, and then we gotta choose when to express it, how to express it, etc. So it's like two very different things.
Okay.
It's like, I have the spices to make this dish, but there's a process of like making it, if that makes sense, you know? I don't know.
And
that
then
was a
what
bad
would be
analogy,
the comparison though with spices for someone that didn't have to think about it? Like for myself.
I don't know. Okay, so here's an example of something that just happened to me right now. I have this thought in my head of how to like make an analogy for this, but I haven't thought about it enough in order to make the analogy make sense, you know? So I'm actually having this trouble, like, literally as we speak right now, where I have this thought of, okay, how do I say, like, something comes naturally versus something exists and then you have to make it? And then I tried to use the cooking analogy, and then I realized, like, hey, everyone has to make food, so that analogy doesn't really work, or I haven't really thought it through as much. Sometimes there's I have thoughts in my head, but I have to take like a while to figure out how to articulate it, because
would it be comparable to say what you were saying? What you were saying before about the mechanic, would it be comparable to almost say like, so for myself, I'm not a mechanic, but is a mechanic. So for him, he could just do something like, oh, and then go and deal with a problem in my car. But for me, if I have a problem with that car, and I didn't have him to help me, I would have to actually literally go and learn and search online and blah, blah. So
yeah,
would that be kind of a comparison?
That would be a fine comparison, yeah.
So for you, it would be like you have to now go and search out everything when it comes to a certain social situation. Not so much now, but with certain things you may not yet have figured.
Yeah.
Whereas most people your age or whatever kind of almost assimilate that in such a way that they don't have to
like
go
social
do that.
code or social skills. There's no like book. I guess you're taught social skills to an extent by your parents growing up, but there's that natural like thing where it's like, oh, he'll just naturally pick up on language.
Yeah, like
absorption to teach him every
of it.
single word. Yeah, absorption
Yeah.
of information. But for me, it's all. You just gotta teach it to me like it's a skill, like learning how to program. Or
that
whatever.
can kind of segue us back into sort of the idea of RDI. Now, one of the major things that I was taught about RDI was to start teaching you by talking out loud what I was thinking. And
yes.
we had talked about that before, and so basically when the person told me how to do that, I was like, I'm going to go around sounding like a complete lunatic because you're talking out loud. But she told me that for someone like yourself, that it's really hard for them to understand what you're doing unless they hear it. And I was like, really? So I didn't believe her. But she said, first of all, get rid of all the commands. Don't say, pick this up, do this, do that. Don't do that. And stop asking questions. And I was like, really? And that's hard, because sometimes I'd say, like, do you want this? Do you want that? Things like that. She said, instead, change it to, like, thoughts that just come out of your head. And I was like, really?
Yes.
Like basically, like, I wonder if you'd like to have a sandwich. I wonder if you'd like spaghetti today. Or, like, she would say things like, one example she gave me was about a mug. She said, imagine if you wake up in the morning and you go for your favorite coffee mug, but it's not in the cupboard. And so when you open the cupboard, it's not there, and you're upset, but you're not saying any of this out loud. You just kind of close the cupboard and you go and find a new one and all that. But your kid doesn't know what you're doing in your head. So she said, what you need to do is basically say it out loud. Oh my goodness, my coffee cup that I really love isn't there right now. Okay, I'm going to go see if I can find a different cup that I could use instead of this coffee cup, because I really want that one, but it's not available right now. Or you could change it to like, oh, it's sitting in the sink. I'm going to wash that up and then I can use that. So I was kind of like, that's just the weirdest thing. But I started doing that and it seemed to make a difference for you.
It was great. I love it. Because, like, I don't know what you're thinking. And if you tell me what you're thinking, then I can understand how you're feeling first off. And then I can use that to guess what other people are thinking. Because I'm like, oh, mom was talking about the coffee cup. So I see, like, another, like, friend's mom doing the same thing, but without thinking out loud. And I'm like, oh, then that's what she's doing. Because my mom was saying out loud what she was thinking during that time. Honestly, if I ran the world the way I wanted to, I think everyone should talk about what they're thinking out loud all the time. Then there'd be less betrayal and less complications with friendships and even relationships. Imagine like how easier relationships would be if you just knew what your partner was thinking at all times.
Yeah, it would be much easier, but some people might break up too because they know how much the person really hates. So I'm just kidding. No, I agree with you. This is where we need to be Borg and have a hive mind and do telepathy, right? But apparently we're not that advanced yet, so we just need to speak up and say, things. The problem is that I haven't been able to undo RDI. For all parents thinking about doing it, it's great, but also you're going to have to make sure that people around you don't mind you being a lunatic. Because honestly, like I go around still saying the dumbest basic things, like, oh, I need to go grab that from the laundry room, and now I'm going to go, and it's like, Josh, you don't even live here anymore, right? So funny.
Oh, yeah.
but the good thing is that your younger sister has been diagnosed this year with being on the spectrum, and I had no clue, because she's a girl, that she had it. And so in a way, my RDI big mouth has actually really helped her, which is like super funny. So, it does turn out to be a blessing in disguise for her, although, I still feel like a lunatic.
And I think the reason why she was diagnosed so much later is that, like, autism, usually I say autism manifests differently in females and males, but that's not necessarily true. It's just that males and female brains mask it differently. Like what I was talking about with the ABA and like deciding to like mask traits. I guess females are just more naturally like socially aware on like a subconscious level or something, and they're just like, they can mask like their stims and the weird things they do more easily than guys, because guys are just like more blatant about it.
Yes, I think that she did mask a lot, and I didn't really see it. I knew she was kind of like slow in developing like her peers, but she was so smart in school. She's never had a problem with academics. I couldn't figure out why she socially didn't give a rip about a lot of things like her hair or her, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't care, because obviously all four of you, I just loved you for who you are and not labels and stuff like that. Although there was, like, what we had touched on the other day is that once you had that label, there was a misconception that I think I was given that you had to be fixed, that you were broken, and I regret swallowing that as a truth.
Yeah, but it did lead you to try and, like, help my developmental stuff, like with RDI and stuff. Because if you didn't pursue RDI, I wouldn't be able to socialize as easily with other people, which is a critical skill in a world with mostly non-autistic people. Now, if everybody was autistic, I wouldn't probably need that, but that's not the case. So,
yeah.
It was very helpful.
Honestly, I think RDI is a bridge between someone neurotypical, if that's even a fair thing to say, and the different operating system that you have.
Yes.
It really just does help. It feels like, okay, I get it. So maybe that's also why with Rachel, I didn't actually think she had it, probably because I could relate to her. Like, I already had the bridge.
Yeah, you already had that establishment with the RDI and, like, saying things out loud, so it was a lot easier. Maybe you would have picked up on it earlier. But going back to what I was saying about, like, males and females thinking differently with autism, because, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm very for, like, gender equality, and I think gender doesn't really have a huge effect on every person's psyche, although it does have a certain effect. But I think the best way to compare it for a neurotypical person is like when a female or a male talks about sex. Like, a guy's like, yeah, she's hot, I'd like to fuck her, or whatever, and then a girl would be more subtle about it despite being maybe just as horny.
Right.
So it's like the same way with autism. It's like with my autistic traits, I was very, like, blatant about it. I was screaming, having tantrums in front of GameStop,
right,
doing stims very obviously, but it was much more subtle.
Yeah.
Even though she had those same things.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. And I guess because I was also primarily dealing with you, it's funny. It's almost like I just didn't pay as much attention to her because she was the baby of the family. And I was like, oh, let her play. Like, she's okay. And I was just kind of focusing really a lot on your needs as well to sort of help you develop. So there was that huge focus. In a way, it allowed her to just go and do sort of some of the development that maybe would have been better if I had sort of left you to do. Like, who knows, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's probably learned how to socialize better over the past couple of years. I can't really speak to her, what she does because I don't live with her anymore for many years, but I'm sure, I mean, she talks with people online and stuff, so I'm sure she's getting that social interaction. A thing that helped me a lot was actually being online at an earlier age, and I know you were worried about that when I first started, like, being online and talking with people, but it was just easier to, like, start conversations with people because, you know, we had something in common to talk about.
Right.
Usually when finding, like, groups online, and then there isn't, like, the facial stuff I have to focus on. So it helped me, like, hone in on certain social skills that are more particular to just talking with voice rather than, like, face and presentation or what have you.
And that's a good thing for parents to know, too. I think my fear was that you would just isolate in your room and never see anyone again. And I didn't realize the benefits to what you were doing.
Yeah, a lot of people have that fear, especially when they see, like, someone online acting like autistic or socially inept. They're like, whoa, they need to get friends outside in real life and stuff. And I do think, like, the aspect of, like, meeting people in real life and seeing facial expressions and etc. is very, very important aspect. But with talking with people online, you can hone in on the other aspect of socialization. So when you start interacting with people in real life, you already have one pillar down. And then the rest, like, being presentable, smelling nice, having good hygiene, proper posture, proper eye contact or whatever. That's, like, something else you can develop without also having to worry about developing
so it's like at least
basis.
It's like at least you have a leg to stand on already.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we all love you very much and feel, like, very connected to you, despite that you've been on the spectrum. And it's the same as we're very connected to her, and so it doesn't stop us from all being very close.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of families have this, like, disconnect, if I were to guess, with their children, as you said you did with me when I was younger and I couldn't, like, show empathy for my family. But I mean, as these connections started to kind of be repaired in a sense or manifest through RDI, it's really helped us connect because it's less of, like, the inability to, like, feel emotion or passion or whatever, and it's more of, like, a broken wire, you know? You gotta fix the wire.
I feel so too, and I think that it's a really wonderful thing to be able to then fix something and then start, even if it's a late start, to sort of be able to relate to one another. And, you know,
but at the same time, it's not like fixing autism or curing
No,
autism. It's
it
more
isn't.
of helping autistic people and neurotypical people relate. Because I can relate to people, that doesn't mean like I think the same way as a neurotypical now.
Absolutely.
There's still a lot of traits that you know, are still with me today and will be with me till the end of time
but they can
or
be
the end of my
used-
life, and I'm fine with that. I love it.
I love it too. I love, like, the thing is too, you know, I have lupus, but you know what? All the struggles that I've been through help me, if I allow it to shape me to be the better person than I used to be every day. All you can do is compare yourself to yourself and try to better yourself every day. Honestly think that I see the good in that too. You know, it's like lupus is with me, but it's not me. It's just a part of the physical of this world for me. Just like how I think being on the spectrum is part of the physical for you, but that's not you, you know? It's like, you learn to kind of adapt and you learn to let yourself come through even despite the challenges.
Actually, I would say it is me. I would relate it less to like a lupus.
Really?
Because like obviously you would prefer to live without lupus. I wouldn't prefer to live without autism.
Okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah,
then point of
I
view.
would say it more as like a trait, like a sexual orientation. Like, hey, my name is whoever, hypothetical person, and I'm gay.
Okay.
Being gay isn't who I am.
That
you know,
is
it's just
true,
an
that
aspect
is
of me.
true. Like,
or like someone's skin color or
Yeah.
gender or what have you.
So it's because for you it's more like a different operating system, which doesn't mean it's inferior. It's different.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it isn't a burden. I mean, it comes with struggles that, you know, won't be with neurotypical people, but I'm sure neurotypical people have struggles that autistic people don't.
I think
because
that's
we're
actually
wired
true
differently.
because sometimes it seems like you cope with certain things much better than me, and I think it might be because you just have a built-in filter that doesn't hit your heart the same. I don't know if that's
Yes.
fair to say, but like, say somebody would make a certain comment about my parenting, and this is more in the past, or whatever it is, I can take that way more to heart than I think you would if somebody insulted your channel or insulted your hair or whatever, right?
Yeah, it depends like the logic and motive behind the message. So I see the message. I'm not like, obviously like I'm upset at like a message like, oh, your channel sucks. But then I look at like who made it, in what context, and when and why. Like, for example, if like one of my best friends said, okay, your channel honestly kind of sucks for this, this, and this, I'll be like, oh shit, I'm taking that to heart. But if it's like a random person who only saw me through one video and they're like, you suck, and they didn't even like watch the full thing or whatever, then that's like a completely different type of comment despite them saying the same thing.
Like, I took a lot more to heart, and I wish I hadn't. Like, things with when I was dealing with you growing up, and there was, you know, people that were trying to help me help you. They critiqued me and my parenting. One time, the person that was teaching me RDI was going over a video because we had to make videos of us interacting so she could guide me better. There was one time where she really criticized something that I had done, and I just was so, like, I just melted and wanted to cry because I felt like so sad that I had hurt you in it. And I'm sure that you don't remember any of this, but it's like, I didn't mean to be critical or too hard or too mean to you in that moment.
Oh, was it when we made cookies?
No, it was actually, I think we were eating dinner, and it was like French fries or something that I had made, and I was, mind you, I was really exhausted because I had 4 kids and I made dinner and I was sitting down, and I don't know what happened, but I think you probably were just taking all of them and eating them, and I was kind of like, oh, can you share, right? Or something like that, and probably I was just not really talking kindly to you. I was doing the RDI thing, but it was my tone that I was more like, whatever. And I think I was sarcastic in it too, like, you know, maybe you should share or whatever, or something. I don't know what I said. But because she was sort of hard on me in the video, and she was rightfully so that I shouldn't talk to you that way or to anybody that way, it still really hurt because I was just effing exhausted. Like, doing all this all the time and just trying to, like, manage at home was just exhausting. And I think what hurt was that people forget you're a person. You're not just a parent. I'm still Ruth. You know, I'm still me who has to deal with my own other stuff. And I think that sometimes gets missing when a person's doing their job.
What's funny when like an autistic person does something rude like that is that like most of the time it actually comes from a place of love. Like, for example, probably in that instance, I would be like, oh, mom made this dinner for me. I'm gonna appreciate it.
Right.
And make sure all her work is like not going to waste, so I just eat it all. But I forget about the other siblings.
Right, but I mean, I couldn't see it that way then. Like, obviously, if I had grandkids or other kids around me now that are the same as you were then, I'm gonna be like, well, whatever. Like, I probably would be way relaxed, right? But that took so long to learn and get to that by the time I get it, you've grown. Like, oh, you're 23, you're not gonna steal fries anymore, right? So,
yeah. But it also goes the opposite way, because obviously I don't know about the siblings needing the food too, and that's like a valid thing to think about. So what was very like beneficial to me with those videos, even though it was like, I guess, upsetting at the time, I specifically remember a video where we make cookies, and obviously I'm acting like bratty or what have you, unintentionally. And then you show it back to me, and obviously in hindsight, looking at the video clip, I can see, like, because I'm looking at it like as if I'm looking at a different person from the outside point of view, what I'm doing, and then I get pissed because I'm pissed at myself.
Yeah,
so
and
then
I think you were so mad, and you were so mad about the videos. Like, I was supposed to turn them on and start recording us doing stuff, and it really caused you a lot of stress too, because you knew in that moment, now you're on a video, right? And that was
but
really
that helped me learn.
Oh, I know, but it was one of the hardest things, because also, like, you know, we're giving an assignment, like, you need to now go in the backyard and carry this ball from that place and put it into this place and then do it again and repeat it. And during that time, we're supposed to, I don't know what it was, have some kind of icon. I can't remember everything now, to be honest, it's so long. But it would stress you out. Like, I'd be like, okay, we're going to go outside and play a game and I'm going to record it. You would like, woo, because it's like, you know, who wants to be recorded? So that was one of the harder things, is to get you into doing the recording. But once it was done, we could, like, kind of critique it, the, you know, person and I, and go over what can you do differently to help certain fill-in parts of your brain, which was cool.
Yeah, and that helped me gain self-awareness, and also helped me become like more comfortable with myself, because something that a lot of people have, like regardless of autism or neurotypicalness or what have you, is like when they're recorded and stuff, they get like, I don't know, embarrassed or nervous or shy or anxious or what have you. But since I, you know, was recorded at a young age and I saw myself and I could learn to improve myself, it made me more comfortable, you know, making videos online. You know, which
that's actually pretty funny.
Now,
I'm kind of glad that it did turn into something where you were able to start up like what you do now. At the very beginning stages, it was just so different, but gave you the confidence to start something you love, and that's just an amazing thing. Just where you are right now, that you love what you do and you're successful at it. It's just not even what I thought when I first had a diagnosis with you. It was almost like, okay, there's going to be this kid that is going to grow into an adult that doesn't live on his own and doesn't take care of himself and the opposite is true. And so that gives a lot of hope, I think, for parents as well that might be thinking what I used to think.
It's more of with raising an autistic child and like helping them you know, grow up into a functioning member of society. It's more of trying to unlock something that's already there rather than fixing something that's broken.
Yes, and I think that perspective could really help a lot of parents as well, to really start realizing that person's in there. It's not like they have to be shaped. It's just that they have to have a bridge to help them come out. One of the things I've said to the parents on the High Functioning website thingy support group that I'm on was just to start making comments. It doesn't have to be that there's any major, you know, goal you're doing. Just start talking. Start saying like, oh, you know what? I think I want to go watch TV right now. I'm going to just go into the living room and sit down and try to find a remote. You know, just do things, but say your thoughts out loud. And it starts to create a map for the child so that they can then start doing and showing their own brain. Like, it's cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. And the thing is, like, the person I am today is still essentially the same person I was when I was like 8, 10, 11. Even though like I seem very, very different, able to communicate better. And obviously that's part of like growing up in maturity, as with any child or person, regardless of mental issues or what have you. But I'm the same loving, smart person I was back then. I just couldn't express it properly. Now I can express it better. And I think in the future, I'll be able to express it even better. Like, I might be more caring and smart than you think I am right now, but I'll be able to express it better. Because I mean, even earlier in this recording, I had trouble expressing a certain analogy, and that's the same with every other person's like kid as well. Like, there is a person underneath there. They just need to learn how to express themselves.
Right.
And that will continue even well into adulthood, like it is with me.
I think it's just amazing, though, that's possible, that the unlocking of that person is possible. And I think that was one of the things that I didn't think was possible when I first had the diagnosis for you. It was like, oh no, now there's this child that's going to be forever kind of stuck inside of himself. And that was a sad thought. But I was really encouraged when I saw things changing because of RDI. So, not trying to advertise RDI, even if you didn't use that, just talk out loud will make a difference. And also,
well, we're talking about the methods without necessarily the curriculum. Like, people can apply these methods without, like, RDI benefiting off it because they're not actually, like, signing up for it. So, essentially, we're kind of stealing their work if you think about it.
Well, pretty much. But it's like, really, all you pretty much do is just say all your comments and thoughts. And, I mean, obviously, if you're with a program, they're going to get a lot more guided help towards where there needs to be fill-ins and stuff like that in the person's brain and what activities to do that can fill that in. Like, we did a lot of games and activities that were targeted for certain places in the brain. So really, obviously, you get what you pay for. You can't really steal that anyway, because it's just so in-depth. But really, if you can't afford it and everything, just talk out loud and also refrain from stupid questions, because that seemed to really be hard on you, and I think it is on most autistics.
Yeah, because we can't express, we have an answer, but we don't know how to express it, so it's just frustrating.
Yes, and then you just melt down. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, melting down, if we can talk about that for a bit, that is just literally frustration from not being able to express yourself. Because we don't know how to express ourselves.
Yeah.
And we're trying to communicate something in our own way. And obviously it's not translating to the other person, and then we get frustrated. It's like trying to tell instructions to a Spanish speaker in English.
And there's some of these things that they'll give kids, like they'll give them picture boards in order so they can communicate better, which is great, but it also it's still another Band-Aid. Like, it sort of doesn't really get you where you want to eventually be, although it can be a stopgap. So, like, say I would say something like, what would you like to eat for lunch? Well, that's too confusing, frustrating, and annoying for someone like yourself at that time. So I could have gone and thrown out a whole bunch of pictures on the table, and then that might have been easier for you to just kind of go, yeah, I want to eat that, or whatever. But it's almost easier to say something like, I wonder what would be, a nice thing for you to eat for lunch. Maybe I could make you a tuna sandwich. I wonder if you would like some mushroom soup. I think that it's a little bit better to do it that way. I think I don't know what to calm you down with. I've heard many parents say that if a person's having a meltdown, that sometimes what could have helped is just throwing a blanket over the person, because it just kind of gets rid of a lot of the outside stimulus and allows them to calm down. But I don't remember ever doing that.
Essentially, they need to be, like, isolated in some way in order to, like, calm down and get back into themselves. Because the quote you said earlier with being inside their own head, that is, like, super true when you're autistic, especially, like, starting out before you get to, like, the first thresholds, we can call them. You're inside your own head a lot. I actually distinctly remember, like, around 11, me getting outside of my head. And basically what that means is, like, interacting with the world outside of my own cognitive, like, subconscious, and just, like, thinking inside my own head is difficult.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, what I'm saying is, I don't know the difference. Because I've never been isolated in my own head, I don't know the difference. I've always been able to do what you're talking about for the threshold. I think I always had that. So there's a difference between how we are.
Yeah, exactly. But basically going back to, like, what you would help a child during a meltdown is, like, what's happening is they're getting overwhelmed by the stimulus that they can't process from the outside world. So what you have to do is, obviously it's way harder if it's happening in public. If it's happening in public, probably, like, go to the car and calm down or something like that. But if it's happening in the house, like, go to his room and calm down. Maybe give him some toys he is very fond of and, like, has a slight autistic obsession over.
Okay.
So they can get back in their head. The goal is to get them back into their head so they can reorient themselves and then face the outside world again when they're not overwhelmed by the current stimulus of it. And obviously the goal is so they never have meltdowns again. As an adult, I don't have meltdowns pretty much at all anymore.
Of course.
Because I can handle almost anything the outside world can sling at me in terms of stimulus.
Yeah.
Some people aren't like that. Even people who are older aren't like that. Like loud sounds or bright lights or what have you.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about that. That's pretty much along the same lines of what I'm talking about. They just need to get back inside their head so they can, like, restart and try again.
Like, for me, I didn't even know that until now when you're saying it. Like, it's so insightful you telling me what it's like that you needed when you were younger, because then I can sort of understand that type of operating system differently.
Yeah, I think a good comparison of this is like if you're playing a video game, right, and you're stuck on a level and you're getting frustrated.
Right.
And that frustration would be the correlation to having a meltdown.
Okay.
What you would have to do to calm down is to turn off the game and stop playing for a couple hours. We're playing the game of like trying to figure out the outside world, and we're getting frustrated and we can't handle it, so we need to go back inside ourselves to reset, and then when we have a fresh mindset, we try that level again.
And I remember being taught also that to look for the signs of an escalation before it becomes a meltdown, and to sort of try to guide the person back to themselves earlier, so to avoid the melt. I tried to do that as well, but I found that didn't really help you to sort of do it yourself. Like, then it was dependent on me. Like, I was kind of guiding you back to self-soothing, but you weren't sort of taking that over and doing it on your own. And so then it became that I was sort of the extension of you, and I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to kind of be able to let go of that. What are your thoughts on that?
I honestly don't know how I developed it myself, but I think going back to like how I spent a lot of time online as a teenager and up until now, the useful thing about like talking to people online is that you can like hang up the call whenever, and you can literally get out of that social situation right away and then like calm down yourself by literally like turning off the computer or what have you. So I think that's kind of how I self-taught myself.
That's really good. That's good to know. And so I'm wondering if the different factors in our lives obviously sometimes can be something that is catalyst for another level of change.
And the thing about me in particular, and obviously this is not gonna correlate to every autistic child or autistic person, is that I have a lot of self-ambition. So I really want to improve myself and be the best like social creature that I can be.
Yeah, I noticed that about you.
Which did help me to improve myself. But if an autistic person doesn't have that factor, which I think is very important to have as an autistic person, but obviously it's kind of a natural trait that not everybody has.
Yeah, and I don't think everyone has that same drive to sort of like either learn or better themselves or, you know, I don't know, create or whatever it is. Some people are a lot more relaxed in certain ways, if you want to call it that, or less ambitious. And that's okay. It takes all to make the world go. But yeah, definitely that came in handy for you.
Yeah. And it's definitely not a trait that everybody should have. I'm not going to force everybody to be like me, but if you're an autistic person, like having that trait is a huge benefit. I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that type of drive, so...
When you were younger, I think it was really difficult for you to even understand how you would take a pencil and like draw the letters and all that different things. And it was like easier for me to have you at home and then just kind of hand over hand draw things and learn things that way. And there was not a classroom where there's like bells ringing and you know, like lots of other students that I'm going between. So it was a little bit of a better way, I think, for younger kids with challenges sometimes to have that option.
Yeah, it's funny because the school system kind of like goes against every natural instinct of an autistic person. Like in a way, I feel like there might even need to be schools where it's like just for autistic people. And I don't know how useful that would be, but because like there's a lot of people, there's the loud noises with the bell, there's like the commands that the teacher is giving, like everything we were talking about, school kind of goes directly against
like it's like almost like school is a stimulant to make you go into a meltdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I think too. I mean, the nice thing about you being at home was like you can get up, you can, do schoolwork in pajamas if you have to. It's not like a big deal socially at home. You can slowly learn some of the things that, are important for by the time you have to go to work when you're like in your 20s and you have to wear a suit or whatever. Like, it's not like a big deal when you're a kid. And so it makes it a little bit easier, I thought. I just felt like there were a lot more options too. Like if you wanted to learn letters, you could use Play-Doh and shape them all into the letters. And, at school, there aren't all those options. The teachers don't have as much time for that. You also don't have to spend time in the car traveling back and forth as a young person and all the noise and all the scuffling and everything else. I don't know. I liked that you did
But at
that.
the same time, an autistic person should eventually be able to deal with an environment like that. So it's kind of a balance.
Yes.
You can't like protect them from that forever.
No, I agree
but
with you.
It's kind of like throwing them into the lion's den early on. So that's why courses with like having tutors and special needs assistants and stuff like that, it's very useful. I'm so glad they implemented that into schools because it's like, yes, you're still in the school environment, but there's like an alternative option, I think, like, for some schools, I remember there's, like, certain rooms where it's like, okay, instead of being in the classroom, you do the curriculum in your own room, but then, once it's lunchtime, you still are hanging out with the kids, and there's that bell, so it's kind of like a hybrid environment. Yeah, it's definitely a balance, because you don't want to, like, throw them into the lion's den to where they can get so scared of the situation that they'll never face it again, but at the same time, you want to teach them. It's like, when you're learning how to drive, right? You don't, like, be like, okay, you want to learn how to drive? well, here you go in the driver's seat, drive me to Superstore or what have you. You have to like actually teach them by like getting the book or whatever. So eventually they should be able to drive, but you don't teach that by putting them right into the position where they have to drive.
And I think this is a mistake that parents make, but probably because they're so desperate for things to get going that they go, well, it's like throwing them in the pool. Well, we got to start somewhere. Parents are given these opportunities to allow their children to have socialization through certain groups that are given out. What do you have to say about that? Because you were the one on the end of actually doing it.
I don't know, like, it helped me socialize with other people since they were, like, less judgmental and I could understand them on a certain level. But at the same time, there's such, like, a wide variety of people and, like, their conditions within those type of groups, because it isn't just, like, only high-functioning autistic people. It's kind of like a smorgasbord of a bunch of different type of people. So it's hard to socialize with everyone, and it isn't exactly like a normal environment because everyone is kind of weird. I mean, it's nice to feel like you're not like the black sheep or the dumb person in the room that everyone has to like take care of, but at the same time it isn't like the same as like socializing with someone in a typical setting. I was actually last night watching like a TED Talk from an autistic person. They brought something up that I don't think I would say, but I think it's accurate. They say that autistic people feel all feelings at the same time, and then we just have to choose how to express them. And we only can really express them in extreme lows or extreme highs, to where we can only be super happy or not happy at all. Which I think, for me, I can have a balance between the two. But I can definitely, like, see that point of view, and I definitely agree with, like, the feeling all emotions at all times, but just choosing which one to express. Like, all the emotions are flowing constantly at the same time, but I choose which valve to open at what time.
That actually sounds really overwhelming to me. Like, I don't feel like I have that. It must be that I have a filter or some sort of thing that doesn't allow me to feel it all at the same time.
Yeah, I guess it's, like, singular emotion versus like simultaneous emotion, I guess.
But I don't think I experience simultaneous emotions very often. Maybe if it's embarrassment and anger, maybe at the same time, like because they kind of go together with something that someone said. But rarely do I get a flood. Like I don't feel that. So maybe that's something again that needs to be touched on with what autistics feel over non-autistics.
Yeah, in a way, it seems like we're actually maybe superior in that way, because I'm thinking about it like, I guess, a computer, to where like you have one processing unit of one emotion. Only one emotion can go in at a time, maybe two. But for us, we have multiple going on all at the same time, and then we can choose which ones to express. Like, I could think about something that makes me sad, like, I guess, racism or whatever. So I'm sad about racism, then I choose to express that sadness or not. But at the same time, I can be happy with the person I'm talking to or what have you. So
yeah, I don't for myself, I can't say I relate to that. Like, it's almost like maybe all the feelings are there, but they're kind of different degrees, and maybe they line up in a certain order before they actually kind of hit me. Like, I'm not really sure. But maybe it's sort of almost like an elevator board when you touch the buttons, and then you maybe have a lot of them going, like, or something. Like floors that you're gonna go to, I don't really know, but I just have one. Like right now, you're on the second floor, and it means angry.
Yeah, it's like looking at, I don't know, like an audio bar, for example, and I have multiple bars, but you only have one particular emotion that's going up and down. I have multiple that are all going up and down at different times, and then I release them into one tube, because I only have one mouth and one way to express.
I just find it funny that you would think it's superior, because it's almost like I don't even know that there is superior or not superior, it's just different. Because for me, like, I would think, I don't know, I couldn't
Well, there's more to it,
emotion.
That's what I meant. Like, there's more to it, there's more possibility. It's harder to manage, but, like, I guess the potential is higher. Although, ultimately, I don't think it matters at the end of the day.
But it depends what you want to accomplish. I kind of like your idea, though. Like, I mean, superior, it's almost like I would just say upgrade. Like, you know how you get a phone, it's like an iPhone 6, and then you get a 6S, and then you get the 7. Almost like sometimes I think people on the spectrum are upgrades, but they kind of like need also some other stuff that isn't yet there, so it almost looks like it's not an upgrade.
The best comparison is to say it's a powerful machine that's unoptimized, and then a neurotypical person is a less powerful machine, but they're optimized to peak right out the gate.
That's what I feel like. I feel like people on the spectrum are going to eventually take over the whole planet. Like, you're like an actual evolution of the species. That's what I feel like, because there's advantages that I see in Aspies that I don't see in the people that are neurotypical. Like, for instance, you're so much more free of social bullshit. Like, you know, okay, like when I go to, like, let's go back in time, I get married, I have a family that I need to get to know, and they're like my extension of my, you know, my husband and all that. You go into that and you're nervous and you worry, you know, are they going to accept me, and are they going to like me, and are they going to embrace me, and all these. Aspies aren't like that. They kind of walk in and they take it as it comes.
Exactly.
And you're living in the moment. And, you know, once you figure out all of this other stuff, like you said, you kind of perfect the system, you guys are going to be like walking improvements of the species. I don't know.
Yeah, humans that aren't bogged down by unnecessary emotion. I mean, emotion's good, but we can
like
choose
I sort
when
of
to
feel
express
like,
it, kind of.
You know, and from our point of view, sometimes it can look like you actually lack emotion, but it's not that. It's that you haven't figured yet how to more perfect it in a certain way that it comes out optimally. I don't know. But over time, can't that be developed anyway? Like, it doesn't really matter. I feel like you don't stress out as much stuff as I do.
Yeah, or I stress out about, like, different things. I stress out about things that, like, I can control, to where I'm like, oh, I'm worried that I'm not gonna achieve what I need to or be up to snuff, rather than stressing about what other people think or what other people do, because I can't control that necessarily.
Yeah, that's an advantage you have. You don't worry about what other people think of you.
I do on an instinctual level, like on an emotional level, I'm like, oh, this person doesn't like me, that makes me feel sad. But then I override it with, hey, it doesn't matter. So I feel it, but I am self-aware about it to where I don't let it affect my decisions. So it's still painful and hurtful to, like, if someone's making fun of you or being mean to you, it's still painful and hurtful, but, like, I can choose to be logical about how I deal with it.
I think that's what I mean, is your logic seems to surpass and overcome what the emotional impact might have been for someone that doesn't think the way you do. Like, you know, like say when you lost your grandfather, there was, like, I think a lot of pain there, like anyone else, but you were able to logically kind of work through it differently and faster and more efficiently, it seemed, than some.
Yes, 100%.
And then that can kind of look like you're insensitive, but it's not that. It's that you just kind of make peace with it faster.
I do, yeah, 100%. There's this thing where, like, people need time to, like, process something or do something, where I can do it, like, within a couple minutes. Like, let's say I get really angry at someone, and I have to, like, you know, get through that anger and then forgive them or whatever. I can do that within, like, 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can't. Like, that can sometimes even take years for some things. Like, I just hold on to things. I don't want to. Like, because forgiving someone is something I want to do, because I heard this really interesting saying, and I don't know if it was on a movie I watched, and I think it's a new movie, so someone might recognize this, but it was a saying of that forgiving someone frees yourself, because if you don't forgive them, you're like the jailer that's keeping them in jail, but if you free them, then you don't have a job. You don't have to keep them in jail, so you're free to do something else. And I thought that was really interesting. It's like, it's true. You free the person, you free yourself. You're no longer a jailer.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like that, because it's like, okay, that logic I can apply to where areas in my life where I feel I can't forgive somebody. I can then say, why am I holding on to this? Like, why am I holding them accountable? Because the more I do that, the more I have to keep thinking about them, and I don't want them occupying space in my head. They don't deserve it. I gotta go do my own thing that I love.
Exactly.
I don't know, I guess it's an epiphany or realization or maturity where you realize you getting angry and holding on to it, it's just a waste of your life. But you seem to be able to grasp that faster than someone that isn't an Aspie.
Yeah, and I do hold on to things for, like, much longer than I should sometimes, especially if, like, they're not willing to move on, and then, like, I kind of get triggered by the fact that they're not moving on. But generally I can just forgive people quicker, get over, like, a certain thing, like someone passing, quicker. And that's not to say I don't have the emotions there, it's just that I can, you know, reconcile with it faster, partly because I've learned how to, you know, socially interact with other people. So it's kind of like a reverse engineer of that. It's like, okay, this is how I, you know, socially activate, and now I can socially deactivate, because I've already know how to activate, now I know how to deactivate. Alright guys, and that's about it for the talk. If you've listened all the way up until this point, I truly thank you. You can let me know if you have down in the comment section below. This is actually something that was recorded over a month ago. I recorded it before even recording my first video on this channel, so some of the topics might have felt like repeats of stuff I've already said, but my ideas for talking about this actually stemmed from this conversation I had with my mother. If you're interested in seeing her come back onto the channel to talk more about her her experience raising me, or if you have any specific questions that you would like her to answer, be sure to tell me down below. If you didn't like it, also tell me as well. I'm sorry if any part of the podcast felt a little preachy. We were just talking amongst each other relatively naturally, and I didn't want to interrupt midway through to remind everybody that what we're saying isn't definitive, it's just our experience and what we truly think. Anyways, that's all I wanted to say. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe, like the video, and I will see you guys later.